know it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel, broadcasting live from Studio Z.
makes me act the way I do.
Good morning, intrepid survivors, and welcome to the Go Bag Challenge. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Zarka. Today, we're going to take a look at what it means to survive in an emergency situation as a woman. And I can think of absolutely no better guest than the special one we have today. I'd like to welcome Perla, who is the amazing creator of FEM Prepper. Thank you so much for being here, Perla. What monstrous knowledge are you sharing with us today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this. I really wanted to discuss survival and shit hits the fan from a female perspective.
Absolutely, because I think that that's definitely a topic that is underrepresented and underappreciated, at least in my perspective. So the first question I have to ask is, how did you get into prepping and survivalism?
I actually got into it, like a lot of people get into it through the scouts. When you're younger, you go out and explore, being prepared. That's just the motto. But I also actually experienced the Loma Prieta earthquake in the Bay Area when I first immigrated to the United States, like within the same month. So it kind of shook me literally, like to my core. And I was so young at the time, and I felt really helpless. And
Oh, Perla, it looks like we're
disaster.
having a little connection issue, but you're back. Okay, perfect. Would you mind repeating that, please?
Oh yeah, sorry. It was just that I just didn't want to be unprepared or feel
Mhm.
helpless in that circumstance, because that's kind of how I felt. I was so young when it happened. And once I learned more about being prepared through the scouts and survival, it just kind of opened up this whole world about, like, I can take care of myself,
Mhm.
and I can have things ready. And from there, it all evolved. I didn't really get into preparedness, quote unquote, when until I was more of an adult and I could financially support
Mhm.
my preps. But I really wanted just to make sure that we as a family had the basics whenever a disaster happened. And that's where it all started.
That's so interesting because I started my sort of prepping journey too with an environmental situation. I luckily didn't live through an earthquake, but one of my good friends' mom was talking about an earthquake in the Bay Area, which is where I was born. And I remember her saying that I always carry a pair of sneakers because she wore heels to work. She's like, I have to have
Yeah.
practical footwear. And I
Yeah.
think you brought up such a good point that for me, also as a prepper, I think that there's something so empowering about prepping, of, like you said, being prepared. I was a Girl Scout as well, and with that
Awesome.
mentality, I find power in feeling like I'm prepared. But I think that that brings up a question I'd like to ask you about what's it like being a woman and a survivalist? I mean, I think you take one look at the pre-made items that are out there geared towards women, and everything is stylized, everything is expensive, everything is branded, which I think is impractical. And I think that there's sort of this corporate, desire to sell prepping to women in this like shiny pink package that I don't think is the most appropriate way to be doing it. So what obstacles or stigmas have you faced as a female prepper?
Well, for sure, this is a very male dominated niche, regardless of, of what world you're looking at it, whether it's social media or, just even education. But I do notice that, they try to sell these pretty packages to women for survival, to try to probably to get us more engaged and market things that we don't really need.
Yeah.
And just like they do with everything else. But I've also noticed that they jack up the prices on the female prepper items that are labeled female. And I don't know if it's like the pink tax, that's what they call
Mhm.
it. But I've noticed that, everything that's geared towards women, it's so unpractical. You have these pink bags and, with crosses on them, and just like they're so expensive that, even with brands that are tactical and are designed, for people who are, living in the outdoors, they make them so expensive, and it's not very practical for women to have so many options that are, not going to honestly help them in the apocalypse. You're walking around with a big bag that has a, emergency sign on it. They're
Yeah,
like someone's going to come and steal that from you, and it's so
exactly.
impractical.
No, you make yourself a target, which I know is something that you've talked about on your show. So before I ask my question, can you tell us a little bit more about Femme Prepper and what you do on YouTube and on your website?
So I am more focused on educating families and women on how to be more prepared for any disaster. I actually live in California, so I focus more on evacuation and preparedness. There's a
Mhm.
lot of fires here, and of course, the most common things that could happen here are an earthquake or a fire. So I want to prepare families to get ready to evacuate. I don't think that many people know what it's like to have to leave your home and leave your belongings and everything that and leave and potentially not come back to it. It could all be burned down and it could all be gone. And I think there's a mental preparation that a lot of people haven't gone through, and I want to kind of help people get through those phases of evacuation, getting their families ready, getting ourselves ready, even if we're just solo. I'm not, I don't have a partner and I travel in my bus alone, but I do have a family and I want to make sure they're prepared even if I'm not here. So that is what I like to do with my videos, is to bring preparedness on a practical level and make survival more relevant to people that truly need it, because we are all so unprepared. No matter how prepared you think you are, we're still unprepared. And I want to help people, increase their knowledge and their awareness of how prepared they can be and what to do next.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of traveling alone. As a woman and as a petite woman, I'm stronger than I look, but I think that security is always a major sort of threat or consideration for me. So, what sort of tactics do you have for self defense that you take into account?
Well, the first thing, honestly, that I mean, you just have to trust your gut is the very first thing. If you are somewhere, you're traveling and you feel unsafe, there's something inside of you that something's wrong. Listen to that. That's the first thing. The second thing I encourage women to do is to get self defense courses, classes, and make sure that they can physically, fend themselves from an attacker, because I all these other channels, of course, they're gonna promote guns and and being safe and having ammunition, weapons, and these kind of things, which I do condone and I do promote as well. But I also believe that not everybody wants to own guns, or or has the capacity to purchase guns with the prices that they
Yeah.
are now, especially, and everyone has their own, political views on them. So I like to also focus on the other aspects of preparedness, being prepared to, fight off an attacker, self-defense. And of course, yes, I condone, having tasers, pepper
Mhm.
gel. I don't support pepper spray, because that's it. With the wrong wind, it's just going to come back to your face. So pepper gel.
Okay, pepper gel, write
uh,
it one down.
yeah, the gel is important. But I also like these things because you can make them yourself. So I also like to go into depth about how to prepare on a budget, because I don't think that a lot of people are, in a place where they can buy these things. Prepping can get expensive.
Yeah.
So I also like to make sure that, I focus on the ways that people can get prepared for a low cost.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
self-defense, I think, would be one way, because that seems like an investment that carries itself throughout. Because as you mentioned, I think that the other thing that people sometimes forget about any kind of weapon, regardless from pepper gel to a gun or to a knife or what have you, is that it can be used against you as well. Whereas I think your body, again, it kind of goes back to that empowerment thing and trusting your gut. If you can trust your body, I think that
Yeah.
that's a really powerful thing and a valuable tool. But speaking
Exactly.
of bodies, so one other thing as a woman that I constantly think about is, so for people who menstruate, that presents a whole realm of hygiene needs during the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So, what are some sustainable, practical ways that you think to factor in periods?
Of course, I'm stocked up on tampons up the wazoo. But I think that most women talk about that, in hygiene and getting ready for that time of the month. But I also, like to talk about alternatives. You can possibly, just opt out for reusable pads. These are things
Mhm.
that you don't have to stock up as many on. Of course, there are pros and cons to these. You'll need water to wash them and prepare for that as well. But the
Mhm.
other thing that I promote is the menstrual cups,
Yep.
because they are so easy to use, and I actually just tried them for the very first time and I was so impressed. I was worried that they were going to leak, and they don't.
Mhm.
You can literally just wash it and re-sterilize it, and it's ready to be used again, and it doesn't cost as much water, or utilize as much water to keep those clean and keep ourselves clean.
Mhm.
And I also like to focus on the fact that we're not going to have showers.
Yeah.
We're not going to have we're not many of us are that prepared that we're going to have a shower every day. So making sure that we have a way to wash ourselves, even if you don't have power. I like to use there's bidet adapters that you can
Mm.
use just to cleanse the areas.
Mhm.
And also there I like to keep in my preps garden sprayers, just the pump garden sprayers,
Mhm.
because you can easily use that for a quickie shower or just to rinse off, in the areas that you need to, freshen up in. So I like to keep those kind of things for hygiene. Um, I think that a lot of people don't realize that once the power goes out, the water pumps don't work
Mhm.
either. So, having an alternative way to shower, that's, something that I've utilized when I've gone camping. You can use the garden sprayers for multiple things. So they are great to have in your stocks
The
for
audience is
hygiene.
expressing my exact thought. I think that the garden sprayer is brilliant. It's something that you could easily scavenge, right? I mean, that's something
Exactly.
which is something that I think is important to think about. And I believe on your show, you've talked before about the importance of having a map and then marking spots that are both dangerous and helpful on a map. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I travel in a bus now, so technically I pre-bugged out. So I go and I look for places and areas where we can potentially go in an emergency. But I like to go scout these places first. I'm not just gonna go drive somewhere like, oh, that looks good, let's go drive there. So I like to go for a weekend and spend the night and just see how I feel, and mark along the way if there's any water, around, or where we can stop and get water, where we can stop and get fuel if we needed, where we would be able to spend the night, and where it does not look so safe.
Mhm.
But I definitely like to make sure that I have it not just on. I have a big atlas that I keep just as for myself. But I like to make sure that I know what I'm getting into as much as possible, because we may think some areas are safe, and at some point they may have been,
Mhm.
but things change when disaster happens, and I just want to be as prepared as possible and
Mhm.
knowing what I might get into.
No, you're right. Things change, people change, situations change. So I think
Yeah.
that's such an unappreciated part of prepping is thinking about where you would go, what places you would stop at, like you mentioned. And I know you said with your kids, how do you, we had a question from Alana in our audience was asking, how do you prepare children for emergency situations without, giving them extra anxiety or panic?
Yeah, I don't have any children, but of course I have friends
Mhm.
who have kids, and
Mhm.
for them I started it might sound corny, but I started at like a preparedness treasure hunt where I have a list of items, where they can go out and look, and it's items that are useful in an emergency. And I'll have like a flashlight, or a glow stick, make it fun for them, and I'll tell them, okay, whoever gets all the items on the list first is going to get an extra scoop of ice cream tonight, or just something that's going to entice them to go look for all the items.
Mhm.
And you can make it as easy as you want based on the age level. But it's also teaching them what preparedness items are. And after they collected all the items, I'll tell them, okay, so what is this good for? This is a flashlight. What will that help for if
Mhm.
we were in an emergency? And I think it's all in the way you present it. And just to be able to teach them the basics without telling them, you know a disaster may happen, and
Yeah.
terrify them. But if the lights didn't work, now this flashlight will help, you know, guide you through whatever you're walking through. Or if of course you don't want to teach kids how to build a fire, but
Mhm. Yeah.
depending on their age, you can take them out camping.
Mhm.
You can make it as an activity, to teach them. Whoever can start
Mhm.
this fire first. Maybe they're a little older, you guys are gonna get like an extra $10 or whatever in your
Yeah.
allowance.
No, I love the idea of making it something fun. So it becomes not
Mm-hmm.
something that's scary, it's just a part of a way to live. But
Right.
speaking of children, as you know, I think it's really important to consider for the people who can have children. I think that pregnancy is a huge factor in surviving. As a
Yeah.
horror movie buff, I find it inherently irritating that it seems to be like this segment of life that no one wants to talk about in these apocalypse narratives. So let's say the worst has happened. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have access to medical care. You
Right.
don't want to get pregnant. What ways do you think you can be prepared for that aspect of survival?
So I actually am a family planning counselor, and I'm certified in health education when it comes to reproductive health. So luckily, I have tons of knowledge on this and access to supplies. I keep in my stocks condoms, lube, and also, if you can afford to get it up front, even if you're not using it now, you can get it from your doctor, to get some birth control in your stocks, even if you're not using it now or don't believe in. Everyone has
Mhm.
different views on birth control, but these are ways to prevent a pregnancy. If you're already pregnant when shit hits the fan, then understandably you want to prepare for that. But if you can prevent a pregnancy, that would be ideal, just because of the fact that there are so many complications that come with being pregnant and not having medical care.
Mhm.
But you can have everything, like I said, from condoms and birth control in your stocks. But there are also alternatives like Plan B, which I also keep in my stocks, because you also don't know what kind of circumstance you're gonna get in when a disaster happens. And we've all seen it, in the movies and in our culture, that when things happen, um, women and violence on women and rape,
Mhm.
it is a very likely scenario for a woman to find themselves in.
Mhm.
And is that something, that are we prepared for that? Are we openly discussing these topics? I know the men on the YouTube world aren't.
Mhm.
They want to prepare. And I think preparedness for men, is so different than what we as women have to deal with. And I like to focus on that, on the
Mhm.
fact that what are these topics and these things that people aren't discussing.
Mhm.
And Plan B is one of my preferred items to keep on my preps. I also keep pregnancy tests.
Mhm.
We can get these now. So if you can get them now, I would say, at least try to get one or two in your stocks. Because I would hate to find myself in a circumstance where I was violated, or I would have to carry out a pregnancy that I was not ready to.
Mhm. Absolutely. And of course, everyone can be, subject to any kind of sexual assault or violence. But I think
Right.
you're absolutely correct that for people who can have children, there is that additional anxiety and the health
Yeah.
complications. No, and
Yeah.
exactly like what we're saying. It's the exact same concept to me as like finding where you can get gas or where there's a reliable water source. even if you don't want to use it now, having the option to take birth control, I think is crucial. And same thing with condoms is also a great tip because it's not just pregnancy. You have to worry about sexually transmitted infections as well.
Correct.
So there's a whole nother level of, just personal and health security going on there. So yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
definitely. With
We did
that,
have a question. We did have a
okay.
question from the audience I want to bring up. That was, what are any unexpected luxuries that you have in your go bag or personal things that you, yes, Neil said, does Pearl have any unexpected luxuries in her go bag?
Luxuries? I don't think so. I mean, luxury I would call a sleeping bag and a air, a air mattress.
Yeah.
That's luxury when shit hits the fan for me. I like to make sure that I stick to practical items because you have to carry this bag. It gets heavy, and the bag I have is 37 pounds. It's
That's
it,
a
it
lot.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
you know and so being able to hike with that weight on your back is extremely hard when you pack everything in the kitchen sink.
Mhm.
I'd say my most luxurious items I have in there is my air mattress. It's an
Mhm.
air, personal, you just fill it up yourself
Mhm.
camping. And another thing is a hand crank radio with also a solar um, component to it so
Mhm.
it can charge my devices so I can get information. Another luxury item that I would say I have is, well, just no, I think that'd be it.
Hey, I
uh,
mean, sleep is important. I think the air mattress is great. I know I keep something in mind I have like a mini kit too that literally just want to keep in my purse. And I have Taco Bell hot sauce packets because God
oh,
knows what you'll be eating. So that's my little, lightweight sort of luxury item. But
yeah, yeah.
speaking of go bags, I do want to bring up we actually have a go bag contestants kit. So Jen T submitted her kit on Twitter. So I want us to take a look and we can see what's good, what needs to be added. Okay, so what do we
Okay.
have here? We have a headlamp, anti-biting rain jacket, love the zombie angle there, a backpack,
Uh-huh.
running snacks, zombie distractor. I think that might be like a little toy car. Um,
Okay.
we have here some entertainment things and a pair of sturdy shoes. So what do we like about this and what do we think needs to be added?
I love the sturdy shoes. Hands down. That is a must. You have to have good footwear. And what else was in there? Let me see. It's a little small on my
A
screen.
little small, yeah. I think the
Yeah.
headlamp is smart. I think having
Oh,
any
yes,
kind of
of
LED
course.
is important. Although of course you're gonna run into a battery situation with that. So I know
Right.
I carry a little solar charging lantern, which is super lightweight. You can clip it on the outside of the bag.
I
Um,
have that as well. Yeah.
yep. And the other thing I think is missing here is some kind of water purification or
Yes.
something
Or
to hold water.
right, a container for water, be able to purify water,
Mhm.
something to start fire. I
Yep.
don't really see. I
Hmm.
do see the bicycle cards there.
Yes.
That's great for passing time, and they don't weigh a lot, so that's
Hmm.
something that's good. And it's a morale booster. Time,
Yep. No,
Uh,
I carry 2 packs of playing cards in my kit, one for entertainment and then one for bartering, which is something that I know was brought up too from our audience, that the idea of, condoms also are gonna be something that bartering would be I would think, very much in demand.
yeah, condoms, and you know what? You'd be surprised at how much other women will probably want that plan B. So get
Yep,
a couple of those. And
well
they're
you can.
easy to carry. Dice are also a great pastime and they're super small, so if you
Mhm.
like to play dice. And let's see, is that chocolate I see?
That's chocolate.
That is a big plus too because you want to have something that's morale boosting. I do have like small things in my bag that are,
Mhm.
like that. um you never coffee. If
Coffee.
you're How are you going to stay awake for the zombies and try to,
So
try
true.
to
I mean, caffeine is addictive. I know
security
we've talked about it on the other shows before, but I know I
security
like to have my cup or two in the morning. So that's, again, I think one thing about prepping is that it's not just about survival, it's also about keeping your morale up, right? It's about,
right.
so if you need coffee to get started in the morning, especially when shit has hit the fan, Just add those, like quick little instant coffee. Doesn't taste great, but if you need that caffeine boost, that's better than nothing. So we have a comment here from Diana. Sturdy shoes are important, but those look like Doc Martens, which can give you blisters super quick. Any tips for avoiding that, or any shoes you would recommend?
I would really just go with hiking boots that you have used in the past. And if we don't know how comfortable, this person is in those shoes, and maybe those are her most comfortable shoes. But you're right, having comfortable hiking boots are great. I actually I have the Timberlands. They're made out of Gore-Tex, so that they're kind of, they're water resistant. If you're, hiking in different types of landscapes. Another thing that you want to make sure you have is an extra pair of socks, what you call, I guess layering them, because if socks are rubbing against each other, they're not rubbing against your skin, and they won't cause blisters as likely. Or you can also have moleskin in your backpack. That's something that I always carry in my first aid. Sorry, there's a bunch of dogs barking. Shit hit the fan outside and there's sirens.
But you're safe. You're prepared.
I know. We're ready. They're letting me know it's time to go. But the whole thing with me is I like to be prepared to take care of my feet. Your feet are extremely important, and that is a great point that she brought up. You want to have extra pairs of socks and underwear, and of course have ways to keep your feet, nice and dry. Rotate your socks. That's something that I hear from people that I work with that are homeless for a lot. That is one of the most wanted item from those who are homeless and camping and living on the street. Socks. And definitely, the moleskin is a must have to make sure that you can help yourself in those blisters. You can use Band-Aids and duct tape, of course, think out of the box. I love duct tape.
I love duct tape.
Duct tape is a must have.
The unofficial slogan of Go Bag Challenge is duct tape before guns, because I think it's so crucial.
Yeah, for sure. You can use it for so many things. But the other thing that I encourage people to not short themselves on is a equipped first aid kit. I don't skimp out on my first aid kit, and maybe later I have a video on that if people want to check it out, like what's in my first aid kit, and it is stocked to the brim. And if I'm missing something, let me know. But don't skimp yourself out on the first aid kit. Especially, I see all these bags with these small couple Band-Aids. No, you need more than that. And I personally had multiple injuries, dog bites, lost fingers. When you have an injury, you're going to need tons of gauze, keeping yourself, safe from infection. If you can stock antibiotics beforehand, definitely, do that. But for the bag itself, I think she has some great items. The remote control car is a great thing to have for passing time, and of course if there is a zombie apocalypse, but it's going to weigh down your bag, and I would suggest utilizing that weight for something that is more useful and you can use for more than one thing.
More duct tape.
Yeah. Stock up on the duct tape.
Well, I know our audience is super intrigued by your first aid kit, so I'll definitely make sure we share that link on our social media account. But no, I think that something that I also recommend for a first aid kit is, I know that all those fancy names of the medications, I forget what they are half the time. So I'll take a Sharpie and I'll write down exactly what, symptoms, whatever I have in my first aid kit is supposed to treat, how much the dosing should be, drug interaction, because again,
Smart.
You can't.
I do the same thing.
Yep. You can't think that you're going to have access to the internet. I think that's something we have to just think that we don't have. So it's always important to write down the information you need ahead of time.
Yes, of course.
Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to sign off, but thank you so much, Perla, for sharing your knowledge with us. I definitely want to have you back on Go Bag Challenge.
Yes, I would love to be back. And of course, check out my channel if you're interested in more details about what's in the bags. Yeah.
Yes, check out Femme Prepper for more female-focused advice. And with that, I'd like to tell you all to stay aware, stay prepared, and we'll see you next time on Go Bag Challenge.
I know it's crazy, but it seems so logical. I can't deny that there is something Something supernatural with you.